So first of all, the first headline from this one is that it was 75,000 people in the stadium. I think the official number was 74,479, which is an all-time MLS record for a standalone game. I think the previous record was held by Atlanta from a couple years ago. Uh, so it's a new record. Congratulations to Charlotte FC. I know they've been building to this for a good long time. The scenes in the stadium were fantastic. The fans are right down on the field. I thought the camera angle is really, really good. It makes it for one of the more watchable broadcasts when you have it up a little bit and you can see both sidelines, which is nice. Uh, there's a lot of reporting from the ground and just videos from the tailgate and the marching from outside, and the fans really brought it, singing English and Spanish songs. A couple that I recognized from my old Metro Stars days back in 101. That was nice to see. And the team played a lot better than I think they did last week against DC United. That said, they're still very much a work in progress. They didn't have a ton of good chances. I would say their two best chances came late when Christian Fuchs almost snuck in there and uh, arguably, had an argument for a penalty. And then Daniel Rios, I believe it was able to sort of shoot the gap between the Galaxy center backs well into stoppage time. Almost ended up with a late equalizer. Could not find it though, and that means that even with all this, it really was Efra Alvarez's night. Efra, I mean, we've heard about this kid for about 5 years now, waiting for him to make good on his promise and his obvious talent. And it's come in spurts. It's come in fits and starts, and everything that I've heard in the past was, yeah, he's talented, but he's still just a kid off the field. He doesn't take it seriously. He's not really a professional yet. That changed this preseason. This preseason, the stuff I started hearing from people around the Galaxy, other players on the team, was that the switch has been flipped. He wants to go to the World Cup. He wants to be a starter for this Galaxy team. He wants to be a difference maker out there game after game. And well, he's not a starter yet, but he came in and he was a difference maker in this game. I would argue he was a difference maker last week as well in the Galaxy's 1-0 win to start the season. But there's no argument this week. It's like he got out there and he rifled home what's probably going to be the goal of the week from about 25 yards out. I mean, and this is what you hope to see with young players in this league, the ability to develop into guys who can win games for their team. And everybody's known that Efra's had the kind of talent. It's just taken him a little longer than I think all of us have hoped for him to get there. That said, he's still just 19 years old, and this is the difference in MLS and in American soccer now compared to even 5 years ago. Is like we could have 19-year-olds who it feels like we've known them forever. It feels like they've been around forever. You get impatient when they haven't had that breakthrough already by the time they're 19. Well, it looks like with Efra Alvarez, small sample size, just 2 games. It looks like that breakthrough is coming in 2022 because he just looks, he looks like a grown man now. He's still got maybe a little bit of baby fat, but he looks a lot, more fit than he did 8 months ago. And he's more decisive when he gets out there. And when you have that combined with his skill, which is just elite for an American player, and he's Mexican American. He's chosen to represent El Tri for the national team. I should say that. But when you have that combination in there, it's nice to see him put it together, and it feels like his upside is just immense. And getting to see him play with guys like Chicharito and Douglas Costa and Sasha Kleshkin can still ball. Seeing him out there as well, it's nice. And I think the Galaxy fan base has needed that for a long time, have wanted it for a long time, and now it's here. Michele, I'm going to invite you in if you want to come on and talk a little bit, because I know that you've had an up close and personal view with a lot of the stuff happening around MLS, not just this weekend, but last weekend as well, and for the past few years. So I've sent you that invite, and we're just going to keep chatting a little bit more. I am going to turn it back to Charlotte a little bit because they I think improved in terms of their ability to, how do I put this? Not just scrap for the game. They last week against DC United, they looked like a team that was playing their first game. Now this week they did look outgunned, right? They looked outmanned against this LA Galaxy team, and I don't think anybody is too surprised by that. But they really did look like they had a little bit more clarity in how they wanted to play, and I thought they were able to, in patches, execute that at a pretty decent level. This is not a playoff team this year, but they're not going to be roadkill, I don't think, either. Michele, I see you're on. Tell me, let's talk about this game. What did you see? We'll start with the hosts. What did you see from the Charlotte team tonight?
Oh, here we go. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I just got the beginning of the game. I was on the broadcast. I'm here in Kansas City. We had the Kansas City Sporting Kansas City Houston Dynamo game at Univision and TUDN. So I missed all of the games during Saturday, but I got to my hotel back to watch this game, and I'm pleasantly surprised for what I'm seeing from Charlotte. I was very pessimistic coming into the season, but kudos to their coach, to Miguel Angel. The team looks really well coached.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think part of it was you could see it in the halftime adjustments, right? Because the Galaxy were all over them in the first half, and the second half, again, the Galaxy were still the better team, but it was a little bit more even. I thought they were a little bit more Charlotte were a little bit more dangerous at times, and that suggests to me that even though I think there's frustration probably from Miguel Angel Ramirez, like he knows what he's doing. He has something that he's aiming for with this group.
Yeah, and the first half ended with 12 shots to 0 in favor of Galaxy or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we could see. I mean, it's the growing pains of a new team, of an expansion team, of a team that it hasn't finished being constructed. We'll see Sidorsky today making his debut. We're expecting the new DP from Poland to come in soon. So I mean, if the fans and the team, the front office, can be patient with Ramirez, with the work that the coach is doing, I think this team has a big future ahead. I think he's a brilliant coach, but it needs time. But again, I think they're showing something much better that at least I was expecting, and a lot of people were expecting. I thought it was going to be worse than Cincinnati, and I think that was the common thought of, because when you see like 2 weeks ago that he comes out to in front of the meeting and he said, we are, you know what, that it's like, okay, this red alert. But
yeah, oh yeah,
I'm very surprised, and I'm very pleased to see, because we don't want another Cincinnati. So
yeah. We want the ambition that Cincinnati has, but we want a little bit better constructed roster, and I think that Charlotte has that here. And certainly they have a better coach than Cincinnati had at any point up to, and maybe even including this year. Let's go back to Efraín Álvarez for a minute, because I know that you've done a lot of reporting on and around the Galaxy. You're very plugged in with MLS players, and I'm sure you've heard all the same stuff I've heard about Efra's professionalism over the past 5 years. It looks like he's turned the corner, though, doesn't it? Just in terms of his body out there, and obviously moments like the one he produced tonight.
Yeah, I remember when he just started in MLS. Remember that first game, and then Zlatan saying this is the most talented talented young player that I've played with, or the best young player on MLS. And I think he wasn't ready for that. And like you said, you nailed it. He wasn't professionally enough. He wasn't professional enough. His
Yeah.
diet was terrible. You could see it. He was out of shape. I don't want to use the term fat for a professional athlete, but he was. And like you mentioned, he turned the corner this off season. Everything I hear from the Galaxy, it's praising the work that he's done mentally and physically. Like you said, he wants to go to a World Cup. He wants to be a big time part. He wants to be a starter at Galaxy. He wants to be one of the 23 players in the Mexican national team roster in Mexico. And again, it's part of the growing pains when fame and all this um, uncertainty about your future, because he was caught up in the middle of a dual national war, civil war between USMNT and Mexico. And I think that messed up a little bit his focus off the field. And now that he's set to play with Mexico, and he's had games with Mexico, and he's trained with Tata, and now he's more mentally settled in what he wants and what he knows he can be. We're seeing right now on the field and off the field with the way he looks, even. No.
Yeah. So let me ask you that: should we expect to see Efra with this uh, L3 group at the end of the month for the final window of World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF?
Yeah, we should. Same as Araujo. I think Julian has a very good chance of being a starter, especially over Chaka. I was talking to some Mexican colleagues last week and this week, and they're very impressed with what we've seen and what we hear about Araujo and the work he's done with Tata and the Mexican national team. But we should see both, especially Efra. Now that the season has started, he has some minutes on his legs. He's not on preseason. And I was talking about yesterday about Hector Herrera, and how in Mexico the media and the fans are part of the meltdown. Is that Herrera is coming back from Europe, and he's 32 years old, still kind of on his prime, but there's not a player that El Tri can say, okay, if Herrera comes to MLS and loses his form, they don't have that player right now in Europe that they can say, okay, we can plug him in and maybe do something extra on midfield or on the attacking third, like Herrera or Guardado or the old guard can do. And I think that Efra, it's a light at the end of the tunnel for Mexican
Mm.
fans and Mexican media.
Wow, those are huge shoes to fill. He does have that kind of talent.
Yeah.
He really does. If he starts delivering on it now, it'll be great for the Galaxy. It'll be great for L3. Obviously, it'll be great for Efra Alvarez as well. You did talk about Ache, so that gives us a chance to segue to talking a little bit about Houston versus Sporting Kansas City. You said that's where you were today, right?
Yeah, I was part of the broadcast. I was doing silent
Right.
reporting. We had the game for 2DN and Univision, and oh boy, that was not a good game at all. Especially the first
No.
half. Both teams were struggling, especially at midfield.
Yeah. So the thing that struck me about this Houston performance, and we'll start there because they're
Yeah.
getting Ache out summer, and we know he's going to slide right into that midfield. But it just struck me that in the second half, once they put Coco Carrasquilla and Darwin Quintero on the field, they were able to actually do something with the ball. They were able to actually, get the ball into the final third and create a little bit of danger. And there was none of that. There was absolutely none of that until those two guys were on the field for Houston.
Yeah, nothing. And I was talking with some people, including inside the Houston Dynamo team and fans and media people, and they were shocked that Carrasquillo was on the bench. They saw on the first game, they play the same midfield that they played on the first game, and they think Carrasquilla it's their most impressive or talented player on the midfield, even though he's just 20 years old. He's on loan. His loan expires in June, so there's an option to buy. So he has a lot of to prove. And the thing with Houston is that Paronstad, I had the opportunity to talk to him midweek, and he was telling we have two big holes to fill. One on the wings because they have Corey Baird who had a horrific game
Mhm.
today, and Fafa Picoult, and those two are not the necessarily final answer on that position of the field, and they need a creative midfielder because
Oh yeah.
they have an overpopulation of good midfielders, but they are mostly on the defensive side of the ball, like Vera, Seren. They don't have that guy that can break in lines easily. Like today, Carrasquilla showed a little bit of it, but it's not enough for Houston.
It's not. They have a lot of work to do. I think keeping Carrasquilla should be part of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting Ache in part of it. Sporting Kansas City also have a lot of work to do. Over the past dozen years, we've all gotten used to them being one of the best teams in the league. Even with the win, they do not look like that this year. There's bite missing in midfield. Obviously, there's no goal scoring number 9 up there either. What did you see on the ground today from the Sporting Kansas City team?
They have a big problem in midfield, like you said, Matt. Today, Remy Walter was playing as an emergency number 6 because remember it's Ori Roussel. It's injured. He has a hamstring issue. He's gonna miss about 2-3 weeks, and then we knew what happened with Jose Mauri. He's out of the team, so they have a big hole to fill. They lose Ilie Sanchez to LAFC during the offseason, and now on the midfield, we just saw today a team that it's very frustrating to watch on the third part of the on the attacking third. Vermees was very frustrated during the whole game, especially with Shelton. Um, the loss of Alan Pulido, it's huge. Shelton is not playing great, and I think he's feeling the pressure from the fans. He's been very criticized on the media, and you could see it. He's waiting on him a lot. Today we just saw a midfield that Roger Espinosa was the only one pushing the ball forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you were mentioning on Twitter, like when Shelton comes out and Sionis comes in, then Sionis go to the wing and Shaloy goes to play the 9. And like you mentioned, it's exactly it's they're getting weak in 2 spots doing that move.
Right.
So that was a little bit weird to watch, but I'm very worried about this Sporting Kansas City because you need that Johnny Russell and Daniel Shaloy do the same as they did last year or better for this team to cover the problems at midfield and the problems at number 9.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more fragile than it has.
Yeah.
Over most of Peter Vermees' tenure as head coach. That said, betting against Peter Vermees has typically been a fool's errand during the regular season, at least since about 2009 or so. I do trust him to figure out how to make this team decent, but it feels like something big and different would have to happen for them to be truly great, and they have been truly great in the past. I'm inviting Seth McComber onto this chat. Seth covers the Revs for the Bet Musket via SB Nation. Of course, one of the big stories today is the Revs beat FC Dallas 1-0 in kind of not a great game, but the big story out of that is that Bruce Arena passed the great Ziggy Schmidt for number 1 all time in MLS regular season wins. It was inevitable. It feels like for Bruce to have gotten there. Seth, whenever you can, jump on and we can talk about this a little bit. But the interesting thing for me, from a tactical perspective, for this game was that Bruce kind of pulled Tommy McNamara deep in this one, and had him play alongside Matt Polster a little bit. It wasn't he didn't go away from the 4-4-2 diamond completely. It just wasn't as wide as we've seen the Revs play this diamond over the past couple of years. And I think that's smart. I think the Achilles heel, and I've written this a million times with the Revs. The Achilles heel with this team is that they have too often gotten outmanned just in terms of losing the numbers game in central midfield. That didn't happen to them today. I thought they had a little bit more control because of those numbers, and it kind of stymied Dallas because of it. And it wasn't a blowout or anything. Again, it wasn't an amazing game, but I thought it was a good adjustment. And I think it makes me a little more confident that the Revs going forward will be able to, I don't want to say replicate last year, but they're going to be an elite team again this year, and nobody should be surprised at that. Seth, go ahead and unmute yourself. Tell me what I got wrong and what I got right there from that little filibuster.
No, I mean, hey, great job. I love the filibuster as I relocated myself to a quieter part of the house with two kids in here. But yeah, thank you for having me on. First of all, I agree with you. I think what I saw today was that this is a team that plays a different type of midfield. Last year, we saw Tajon Buchanan. We know that Tajon Buchanan is good in wide spaces. So as a result, they played a wide diamond. And that created opportunities for the opposition to overload the midfield. And as you said multiple times, or wrote about multiple times in very accurate ways, that's very difficult for Matt Polster to handle, even though he's a very, very good holding midfielder. So what we see this year is that Sebastian Lletget comes in, and he's going to cycle into those midfield areas, the centrals areas more often. And that's going to create a little bit more of a balance. The issue, in my opinion, is that you now need your outside backs to be more dynamic going forward, and you need them to get into good spaces to create that width. Where Tajon Buchanan created that width sometimes for you, and also create space inside because he is going to occupy more defenders. When Lletget comes inside, you need Brandon Bye, for example, to get forward and to be good with his crosses. And I like Brandon Bye. He's a very good player. He's great in the air, and he's really good with a low cross. But I think I saw a lot today was that you're playing Brandon Bye's feet, and you're forcing him to try to take someone on, and he's not necessarily comfortable doing that. So as a result, he plays backwards or he plays sideways, and that leads to a team that had 0 shots on goal for most of the first half, and their expected goals were 0 as well, obviously, if you're not shooting. So I think that if you're going to play like that, what you're going to see is that you need to play Bye into space, and then Bye needs to play that ball inward. And if I can promote my Twitter, midway through the first half, I posted a video that I think really defines the way the Revs want to play right now, where Sebastian Lletget comes inside, plays the ball forward, it gets to Heel. Heel ends up playing it back to Lletget, who's now found himself in a new space forward, and then he plays it over to Bye. Bye tried to hit an early cross, but it ends up going out of bounds. And in my mind, that really highlights that Bye needs to be a little bit sharper in those spaces to create opportunities so that Buxa or Bo can get on the end of that and start scoring goals.
Yeah, I'm stealing that video from my column, by the way. Nice work making that clip for me. I really appreciate it. So that's one. Two is Josie Altidore came on at the end of this game, and the formation shifted again to kind of a 4-2-3-1, but also it was kind of a 4-3-1-2 with Josie as a bit of a 10 at times. Like, what was going on there by your reckoning?
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit in the press box with my colleague Sam Minton and some other individuals. The formation, I think the Revs are hurt a little bit by the fact that they didn't have a full preseason. They were supposed to come back and play the Haiti team, Cavalier, but they had visa issues, which I wrote about on the Bent Musket. The players were really heartbroken that they weren't able to come to the United States to play that game. But I think that Bruce Arena wanted to play with formations a little bit. He mentioned that during preseason, which gave me permission to talk about formations, because Bruce Arena doesn't really like to talk about formations or injuries.
He will literally make fun of you to your face if you ask him about formations.
It's happened. Trust me, it's happened. But to talk a little bit about that, I think that what we saw today was a more narrow diamond. I think in some parts, I have to go back to watch the film. I think we sometimes saw a box midfield where Polster and McNamara, particularly, were playing a little bit deeper, allowing Leggett to play a little bit more forward with Carlos Gil. So I think that was an interesting dynamic. But then Josie Altidore comes in, and I even tweeted out, I'm like, is this a 4-3-3 or is it a 4-5-1? But Josie ends up in the middle sometimes. But when they have possession, you have three strikers really high up. I think it's something that the Revs are trying to figure out because, I'll be honest, like there was definitely times where it felt like a 4-5-1 and Josie Altidore playing as a right midfielder and Carlos Bo playing as a left midfielder feels awkward to me, right? I mean,
Gustavo Bo, yeah.
Gustavo Bo, excuse me. Yeah, Gustavo Bo. He's someone that doesn't have a lot of pace. And I remember watching the MLS All-Star game last year where he was playing in that position and he gets the ball to his feet and he starts like going at someone. And I'm like, he's not going to be able to necessarily beat someone in that position. And in my opinion, you look at a guy like who's very muscular. He comes in on the 69th minute. In the 70th minute, he gets a yellow card for showing his strength. Josie Altidore is someone who's more of the traditional hold-up striker. So I think Bruce Arena is still trying to figure out what this team looks like. And I think we've seen in the past that when Bruce Arena makes some of these subs, it's just, I'm putting guys out there, you figure it out. And I think that that's kind of what we saw today, that there was a loose idea of what it's supposed to look like, but they're allowed to interchange, move around to try to figure out what the best formation could be.
Yeah, Bruce has always been more about vibes than tactics. And the vibes, to be fair, look really good and can win you a bunch of trophies, and we've seen that. Just give me a little bit on what Bruce has meant for this Revs, not just team, but I guess the Revs franchise as a whole. Like if they feel reborn over the past 3 years and revitalized, and there's good momentum in New England for the first time since the mid-aughts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, afterwards, I was in the press conference, and I was able to ask Bruce Arena about breaking the record today. He was very modest, talked very kindly about his former colleague, Siggy Schmidt. But the real talking about Bruce Arena came from the players. And the big comment that I saw was coming from Andrew Farrell saying that Bruce Arena is remarkable and that he changed this team for the better. And you look back and there was at one point, Bruce Arena said that when he inherited his team in May of 2019, it was a shit show. And he said those words out there and he took it back afterwards, because I think that one thing we think about with Bruce Arena is that he relies on humor and sometimes he could be a little sarcastic. But I think that he's someone who's level-headed and is a good person and really cares about the people around him. So he came back afterwards and said, I shouldn't have said that. Like it was just a moment that I said those words. But Andrew Farrell came out and said that he changed this team for the better. That in 2019 they had only won 2 games out of the first 15, and they ended up winning a spot in the playoffs, right? And then in 2021, they broke the single season points record. So what he does is that he brings in pieces, he manages egos, and that's something that Josie Altidore recognized. He puts the right people on the team to do the right things, and he trusts them. So he's someone, Jonathan Kraft was on WBEZ before the game talking about how that this team really hasn't had an elite coach since Stevie Nicol. And it was really cool to kind of hear that. He said that he loves Stevie, but this is a coach that brings them to the next level. So you have the owner operator of the team, Jonathan Kraft, recognizing it. You have the players recognizing it. I'm recognizing it. There's a lot of people recognizing how good Bruce Arena is to this team.
Yeah, and now they can recognize that he's at the very top of the all-time wins list for MLS regular season coaches. That's no surprise. No knock against the great late lamented Ziggy Schmidt, who was an all-timer himself. But congrats to Bruce Arena for that one. Seth, I'm gonna move on from this, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the Red Bulls today, because the Red Bulls are the hottest team in MLS through 2 weeks. They have gone on the road now and won 2 games, 6 points from 2 games. 3-1 last weekend at San Jose, 4-1 this weekend at Toronto FC. Just pounded the hell out of the Revs. Gerhard Struber has done a wonderful job having this team bought in and ready to play out of the gates this year. And the interesting thing from this week is that he changed up the formation again for this team. And that's something he's had to do kind of constantly in his a little over a year now that he's been in charge. They played a 3-5-2. They played a 4-4-2. They went to a 4-2-3-1 down the stretch last year. They also played a 3-4-2-1, which is what they started in last week. This one they came out and they played the sort of archetypal Red Bull 4-2-2-2, which we've seen Leipzig play that. We've seen Salzburg play that over the years. We have seen every Red Bull coach from Jesse Marsch all the way to Gerhard Struber and Chris Armas and Bradley Carnell and try this multiple times to get this team to play a 4-2-2-2. It is like the first page of the Red Bull Global Handbook. This is the formation we want to play. This is how we want to play in this formation. Nobody's ever been able to pull it off consistently. None of these coaches, not even Jesse Marsch, have been able to pull it off with this New York Red Bulls team. For one game at least, it worked exactly like it was supposed to. And the advantage to playing a 4-2-2-2 is that when there are turnovers in central midfield, you always have 2 forwards perched up top between the opposing lines of defense and midfield, so you can play direct and vertical. You have 2 vertical options with that first pass, which means you can eliminate the opposing midfield, and you're already making the opposing back line make really tough decisions and rotations, and your forwards have somebody to play off of. So when you have like that is how it happened for under Ralph Rangnick, 10 years ago now, when RB Leipzig started charging up the table in Bundesliga. It happened that way almost exactly in this game. They were able to go around Michael Bradley like he was an orange cone time after time after time in the first half. And the other thing about lining up like this is that the forwards take so much attention from the opposing back line that if you have one of the wide midfielders release early and then sort of trail the play, unless the opposing either fullback or one of the central midfielders is really awake to that threat, then in transition, you're going to get those pullbacks to the top of the box for one-time finishes. And lo and behold, Lewis Morgan released early, trailed the play, came to the top of the box for one-time finishes twice in the first 20 minutes or first half hour, I guess. And that's how it became 2-0. He then got one on the break, his hat trick to make it 3-0 inside of 40 minutes. Aaron Long finishes it off with a header off of a Frankie Amaya set piece to make it 4-1 just before halftime. Just a really comprehensive win from this Red Bulls team, in doing it in a way that I think Red Bull Global has always wanted them to do it, but in a way that they have only rarely been able to over the years. And I think that there's probably a lot of high-fiving still happening in and around the office because of this one today. There should also be some high-fiving because Lewis Morgan through 2 weeks. I remember when he got traded this offseason, it was, I think, 1.2 million in GAM. Every group chat I was in, every DM I was in blew up. Like, I can't believe that much money for Lewis Morgan. Well, he had an assist last week. He had a hat trick this week. It's looking like 1.2 million was about half of what he should have gone for. He was absolutely superb. Patrick Lamala had a hat trick of assists in this one. I still don't think he's going to be much of a goal scorer as a number 9, but that's okay. Especially if they can go with 4-2-2-2, because the forwards in that formation are supposed to do as much chance creation work as they are supposed to do chance finishing. The other thing that couple other things from Red Bull's perspective that are just wonderful. Frankie Amaya playing that Sean Davis role next to Drew Yearwood, who's kept progressing after a really nice second half of last season. Those two guys seem to fit together really well on both sides of the ball. And Amaya, they made a big investment in him last year, and that looks to be paying off. And which is like, they absolutely need that. That's a non-negotiable, because the only other D-mid on the team is an 18-year-old homegrown who is not really ready yet. So Amaya being able to play that role is huge, not just to make last year's acquisition look good, but to get this team wins and 6 points from 2 games. There you go. And then, of course, the last thing I should mention here with the Red Bulls is Aaron Long is back. He looks something close to 100%, man. Like, there has been no rust on him through 2 games, and he was able to take advantage of some very shoddy marking and really wonderful delivery from Amaya on the goal today. So congrats to the Red Bulls on a great first 2 weeks of the season. They look really, really good. And we'll see how much that can hold up as they face tougher competition. And it needs to be said that just about everybody is going to be tougher competition than San Jose and Toronto FC. But they just buried these teams in a way that I don't think last year's Red Bulls group would have buried just about anyone. So it was a very nice start to the season for them. I'll run you through the other scores from around the league. The last game to go final tonight was RSL's 1-0 win over Seattle, which was delayed by weather for a couple hours. Bobby Wood got the only goal in that one. RSL, for some reason, had like a very nice welcome back tribute to Albert Rusnak, which I do not understand, because he had like 4 pretty decent years there, but he's not a club legend or anything. And then he left in free agency for a rival team. I did not understand the welcome back tribute. The fans didn't understand it either, because they were booing him with every touch, which I respect a lot. Anyway, 1-0 RSL over Seattle. Another game that was delayed by weather was Minnesota's 1-1 draw against Nashville. That Nashville goal to open this was absolutely lovely. Dax McCarty over the top, Donnie Mukhtar who pulls it back for CJ Sapong to tap it in. Hassani Dotson got the equalizer in that one. Nashville with 4 points from 2 very tough games in this 8-game road trip that they have to start the season. Colorado got off the schneid, crushed Atlanta United 3-0. FC Cincinnati, their commitment to the bit is unparalleled. They gave up a 98th minute goal off a penalty to DC United to lose 1-0. Chicago and Orlando scoreless. Vancouver and New York City FC scoreless. Philly came from behind. They were down 1-0. They won 2-1 up in Montreal. That was a big win for them. I know that Jim Curtin was not happy about last week. And then the last game that we haven't really touched on, San Jose come from 3-1 down, 2 late-headed goals from Francisco Calvo for a 3-3 home draw, playing 10 versus 11 against the Columbus Crew. It was not a good game, but it was chaotic and it was entertaining, and you can't knock that. Tomorrow's games, we had a lot of games tonight, so there's not a ton tomorrow. Just 2 at 4 p.m. Austin hosts Miami. That one's on ESPN and ESPN Deportes. And then at 10 p.m., LAFC hosts Portland. That one's on FS1.